Hi there, it's Gula from Gula Tech Adventures. Today we're going to talk about the differences between vulnerability scanning, pen testing, and finding implants. Now, what is these three is the best way to test the security of your internet? How do you know if you're secure? These are fighting words. When I was the CEO of Tenable Network Security, I used to get into discussions, we'll call them discussions, all the time about what's better. Is it better to have a penetration test? Is it better to be compliant continuously? Is it better to do a full scan every day? It's hard to say, but let me give you some feedback on where we're at. So, vulnerability scanning. So one of the dirty secrets of vulnerability scanning is that when I would go out and I talked to 100 different customers, 500 different customers, their vulnerability scanning programs, their vulnerability management programs, their continuous monitoring programs, they were all really different because there's a lot of ways you can do this. Are you doing it continuously? Are you doing your scan with credentials? Do you have agents? Are you doing web application scans as part of your vulnerability audit, or is that a separate process for your cloud CI/CD stuff? Are you doing a full port scan? Are you doing a full network scan? What about IPv6, right? So how are you doing asset discovery? Do you bring in data from other places? Do you use snippers? Do you use your intrusion detection systems? And oh, by the way, if you're on Salesforce and Workday and all these other kind of SaaS apps, so you're auditing those. And then once you have all these results, what do you do with them? Do you trust the vendor? Tenable's got a great way of combining exploits with vulnerability criticality, or what is being exploited out there. But the question is what do you do? Do you only focus on exploitability, things that are internet facing? Well, what about vulnerable clients on your admin computers, right? What about the age of the patch? What are you going to then maybe only take the vulnerabilities that certain bad guys you care about are exploiting? Are you only going to fix the critical systems, right? Are you only going to worry about compliance violations? All of these were a completely different every customer I went to. It was really kind of interesting to see kind of where we were at. And I'm recording this right now in July of 2022. And, the world isn't much different than it was 20 years ago. We just have a lot more systems out there. So then when it comes to penetration testing, the idea of hiring some penetration testers to see if they can break in, that's kind of a dated concept now, right? The network is so complex and it's so difficult because to maybe even detect the pen tester compared to all the scanning that we're doing. But there are some interesting things to think about here. First of all, is how realistic is it, right? Are you simulating an insider? Are you, going at that custom web application test? You're doing more of that software testing for what you're producing. Do you want the test to use 0 days? Now, this is a really interesting question, right? There's a lot of known vulnerabilities out there. Do you want to have 0 day access? Well, 0 day access, you might as well give them an employee's default access. Do you want to have just give them insider access? When I was an NSA pen tester, a lot of times I just kind of walked in and just said, okay, here you go. Here's your computer. Here's where you plug in. And then finally, are you going to take the pen test approach where the red team is off by themselves? Or are you going to have some sort of purple team where the blue team on defense kind of informs the red team about, hey, maybe check out server number 32 or check out port number 88 that you haven't really been looking at because there's something there. But just like with vulnerability scanning, there's what do you do with the results after? A lot of times people want to know, did we get in and were we detected? And those are very valid, answers. But often, if you look at the universe of vulnerabilities that you can test with a vulnerability scan, a pen test is a very, very narrow list of that. But with both of these two things aside, and I didn't even add compliance into this conversation, I really want to ask, what are we defending against as networks? Is it cats with lasers from outer space or even aliens? No. We are trying to protect our networks from ransomware and malicious software and insiders. And basically, there's really no difference between malicious software and insiders if you really think about it. If I hack into a computer and I start using the privilege of the person I hack into, that's the same activity as that. So if you think about detecting ransomware and malicious from all this point of view, we have to add in the equation that it's 2022. We have a whole apparatus to detect these events. Now, of course, minimizing vulnerabilities, minimizing attack surface makes it harder to attack. At the end of the day, though, we still have to find these attackers. So a person named Dmitry Alperovich, when he was the CTO of CrowdStrike, suggested that we have frameworks for how well we can detect implants, detect malicious software. He suggested that you need to have detection of 1 minute of malicious activity, 10 minutes to basically investigate it, and 60 minutes to remediate it off of your network. And he suggested this because he was tracking a wide variety of Russian and Chinese implants, and he noticed that once they achieved a foothold, it didn't take them very long to expand and infiltrate the rest of the network. So how do you do this? And how do we do this in the context of vulnerability management and penetration testing? Well, thankfully, we have the MITRE ATT&CK framework. The MITRE ATT&CK framework is a framework that allows us to understand and describe tools and techniques and practices that bad guys do and malware does on our networks. So then we can have mitigations on our network. Now, this is a great framework, but if you, in practice, trying to apply it to 100% of your network is difficult. It's just like everything else that we've done in cyber, with fully patching, trying to keep all the pen testers out. It's just hard. And there's simulation tools as well. We've been investing in products in this space for a long term. We used to be investors in ThreatCare. That company is acquired. Now we're very involved with a company called Scythe that can actually produce malware. Like, is really, I say malware, it's really simulated malware that exercises various parts of the MITRE ATT&CK framework. The interesting things with these simulation tools is that you're always kind of playing catch up with the latest attack, right? The bad guys are not sitting there going, oh, I've been using this half of the MITRE ATT&CK framework to launch our attacks. Now I'm going to use this half this week, right? And then another thing you can do to kind of see how well that you can detect these detections is you can just instrument your SOC data. So if you have Splunk, if you have some sort of SOAR product, if you have events coming in, you should be able to derive how well you're doing this 110-60 sort of framework. And if you can't achieve 110-60, maybe you can do 220 and 120, or at least figure out what those frameworks are. And by the way, slide this metric up to your board, up to your executive management, and have suggestions for how to improve it by increasing your people, your staffing, and also your technology, maybe your visibility into your network. Now, of course, you can't do any one of these things by itself, right? If you don't do vulnerability management, you're going to have so many alerts and attacks, you're never going to get to 110-60. If you just trust your vulnerability management program, you never have some external people come in and do pen testing, you're always going to have some stuff that's in there. So all three of those, I really believe, is what it takes to have a modern SOC. And of course, I got into this industry in the mid 90s. Today we would talk about this in terms of purple teams, orange teams, all these different colors of the rainbow, which is excellent for describing the rules and regulations for who's working with who. So if you enjoyed this video and want to hear more, check out our other topics on our channel here at YouTube, or on Vimeo, or on our website, however you're watching this. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, I'm Ron Gula from Gula Tech Adventures.